Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever in the world you may be joining us from today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio, and I am the CFL York Operations Coordinator. I would like to officially open the third session of the Unboxing the SDGs for People, Planet, Prosperity, Peace, and Partnership speaker series, presented in partnership with the SDGs in the classroom community of practice at York University. I would like to start today with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Takaranto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that the territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably care and share for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event, our participants may be joining from various locations, so I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speaker, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to our webinar. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator, Matthias de Dovitis. A strong advocate for public education, Matthias has created and supported programs to help youth achieve better academic potential, including tutoring programs, bursaries, student placements, and leadership programs, and other initiatives that have helped thousands of students over the last 20 years. He was elected to the TDSB school board this last fall, the first Latinx to hold that position in 25 years. Matthias currently works for City of Toronto Councillor at City Hall Anthony Peruza as Chief of Staff. He graduated from the University of Toronto with a double major in political science and Latin American studies, and has a Master of Arts in political science from the University of Alberta. Matthias, thank you very much for moderating today's session. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Francesco. And first of all, thank you all for being here. It'll be my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. But before I pass it on to her, just to remind folks, if you're interested in leaving a question or a comment, of course, you could do that in the chat. There's also a Q&A. If you want to come off mute and ask a question, you can also do that. You can raise your hand and get a text that way. But it's my pleasure to start this off by introducing our speaker, Dr. Kshamta Hunter, and thank you so much for being here today. Dr. Hunter's research explores the intersections of sustainability, learning, and leadership using transformative learning and social innovation frameworks. She's interested in designing responsive and relevant integrated curriculum and pedagogical approaches for the 21st century through understanding the developments of competencies for innovation towards sustainability. She's the manager of transformative learning and student engagement with the UBC Sustainability Hub, where she's able to shape a lot of her research ideas into practice. And an instructor, she's also an instructor in the Faculty of Education. She's the co-chair of the Celebration of Scholarly and Creative Works with the Canadian Association for Curriculum Studies, and an associate editor for the International Journal of Sustainability in Higher Education. She's a member of FIRST, the External Advisory Committee for Canada's 2030 agenda. She's also the recipient of the 2023 President's Service Award for Excellence. And with that, Dr. Hunter, we welcome you here today.
Thank you so much, Matthias, and thank you, Francesco, for the land acknowledgement and welcoming me to the CFL series. It's exciting to be here. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the west coast of Canada in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is situated on the unceded ancestral lands of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. And I'm highly privileged to be here and able to present this work to you. I will just try and share my slides first here so that, can you see that? Is that good? Great. So I'm going to try and focus on, like it says, the pedagogies rather than the curriculum side of things or the content side of things. We know that the SDGs demand a new approach to teaching and learning, and educators are facing this demand of being able to talk about the issues, the poly crisis that we are facing, as well as support students emotionally with so much uncertainty that surrounds them, which needs more transformative and justice informed approaches that goes beyond the Western ideologies and embraces that alternative views of inclusivity and justice approaches. So with that, we know that the SDGs framework is based in the interconnectedness and collaboration, which fundamentally relies on aligning values, compassion, understanding, and cooperation. So where I bring in the SDGs education in my own classrooms and teaching and learning, I embed a lot of values-based and justice-informed transformative practices that I hope to share a little bit of today. Most of it's based on these kind of 4 fundamental pedagogies or frameworks or principles, if you want to call it. Constructivism, which is basically based in this idea that there are multiple realities and each individual creates their own reality based on their own lived experience. So the way I would go into a classroom as my own lived reality, and I'm also facing multiple realities depending on how many students I have in that course. There's also foundational values that we really need to, it is very much values-based, and I'll touch a little bit more on that later in the presentation. Transformative learning is a huge basis of all the work that I do and the pedagogies that I will share today, and I'll talk about them as well as reflexive pedagogy, which is really about dismantling the hierarchies, but also encouraging students to flexibly interrogate their own values and beliefs and assumptions. So how does this connect to SDGs and competencies? So we know that there are competencies that UNESCO has highlighted as the ones that will support the accomplishment of the SDGs. And these are the 8 that I've highlighted here, but there are many more. These were the ones that from UNESCO's 2017 paper on the competencies and relating them to the Sustainable Development Goals. The competencies itself are the knowledge, the skills, and the values. The knowledge of the current global and local issues that might be relevant in one's practice and influence one's action. So they are knowledge about human cultures and physical and natural world. The skills associated with leadership development, such as communication, conflict management, problem solving. And these are considered intellectual as well as practical skills, as well as values that connects to one's assumptions and opinions to their work and interactions, as well as understanding of other values, beliefs, and frame of reference. So it's not just our own interrogation, it's also trying to understand what others' perspectives and frame of reference could be. So the way I understand these competencies, and there's so many, and they all align. There are sustainability competencies, but there's also social innovation competencies. There's 21st century competencies. So there's all these competencies, but they all align. Their frameworks all align. And I'm happy to share that work that I did as part of my PhD work about these aligning of these competencies. The way I look at them, sort of try and understand them or scaffold them, is thinking about these competencies under 3 main kind of groupings. There's intrapersonal competencies that are aspects that are related to personal and internal characteristics. These are the competencies such as self-awareness, internal motivation, justice, responsibility, and ethics, perseverance, tolerance, and flexibility for ambiguity and uncertainty that we really need in these days. Then the second group is the interpersonal, which is relational aspects of being, and includes interpersonal relations and collaboration, such as interdisciplinary understanding, global and local understanding, and strategic action. And the third one is cognitive, which is really about intellectual processes and strategies that support knowledge creation, and could include competencies such as empathy, emotional and social intelligence, critical thinking and analysis, and systems thinking. So each one of these, and the way I've grouped them, is that intrapersonal is the one that encapsulates the interpersonal, and interpersonal encapsulate the cognitive. So really need that intrapersonal first in order to build the other two groupings, the way I frame it. And each one of them, if you look at the way I've highlighted it here, is that intrapersonal, and I'm only highlighting one key approach to support these groupings. There are many more. For the intrapersonal, we really need to dive into values clarification. And this is supported by transformative learning, which really indicates that we need to interrogate some of the hidden aspects of our being, such as the values. We need to bring them into objectivity and be able to talk about them explicitly. So how do we bring these values clarification exercises into our classroom? There are some of the examples of like really talking about values. What are they? First of all, let's define them. What are the values? What are some of the core values that you, as an educator, but also as students in your classroom, hold dear? And how are they impacting some of the work that they're doing in their group projects, for example, or even the way they're interacting in the classroom? The interpersonal, one of the key ways to interrogate that is something that I call discourse. And I know discourse has different understandings, but in this case, I'm defining discourse as a two-step process, which is very much justice-oriented and justice-informed. We often ask our students to go right into discussions and, okay, let's spin right into discussion of this topic or something that we talked about in the classroom. But we need to take a pause and go into that first step of dialogue first. So discourse is divided into dialogue and then discussion. Dialogue is justice-driven, is divergent. It's where everybody gets the chance to put their ideas, their perspectives on the table without much questioning. Then comes discussion, which is convergent, and you're trying to come up with a group idea that most people agree to. So this dialogue first, which is more justice oriented, everybody gets the chance to put their ideas on the table, and then discussion. So kind of breaking that a little bit and having that practice in your classroom. And then the third one, the cognitive one, it's really relying on the reflective practice. And reflective practice doesn't have to be a pen to paper thing. It could be a walk in the park. It could be a talk with a peer. It could be a reflective conversation with another, with a colleague or a friend. So taking your students outside in nature and having those reflective practices in whatever way works for them, because each person has their own built-in ideas of reflection. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into each one of them. In terms of the values, some of the key ones that I'm going to focus on here, and there are many more, and you can choose to focus on the ones that you feel like are important to you. These are the ones that I sort of focus on, and the biggest one is kindness. And we really need to bring more kindness-driven approaches into our classroom, especially with the climate crisis and the climate anxiety that a lot of the youth that we are interacting with are facing. So respecting and inviting diverse perspectives and appreciating and honoring their lived experiences. So being patient, doing check-ins, very simple things that you can do at the start of the classroom. Values clarification, of course, and grounding exercises such as breathing and meditation exercises, which are more embodied pedagogies. Justice, so kind of questioning the power structures, but also as an educator, as a facilitator, interrogating our own power privileges and positionalities before we go into the classroom, and be able to mindful of our own lived experiences and possibly assumptions. And then the trust, which is demonstrating an appreciation of autonomy and agency. So using content menus, giving choices, kind of soliciting feedback and demonstrating genuine compassion for other humans and the non-human world as well. And the fourth one is resilience, like equipping learners with the tools to face the challenges and uncertainties, so demonstrating adaptability in your lesson planning. And having variety of strategies. One of the key things that I always share is that it's okay to go on a tangent and let go of your lesson plan that you have for the day, if that tangent really takes you into deep conversations that are related to the learning objectives of the course. And then there's also equity, which is ensuring that teaching is culturally responsive and students are feeling welcomed. Interconnectedness, which is applying curriculum to the local community as much as you can, or working with community partners, welcoming them in your classrooms as well as relationships, demonstrating genuine care and empathy, and building that relationship through one-on-one conversations, which takes a lot of time and effort. But really, those one-on-one conversations are key to building those relationships, either before class, after class, or having your office hours. Just building on that, in terms of the discourse and reflective practice, creating the classroom that is embedding co-creation is a big part. And I'm still working on that. By no means, I feel like I have a very well co-created classroom. I'm still working on this. It's hard. One of the key things that I do is share, for example, my syllabus at least 2 weeks or a week and a half in advance with my students and ask for some feedback in terms of what are you expecting from this course given these learning objectives. What is missing? What are some of the topics that you want to discuss? Usually you won't hear anything back, not as much, but then you do it again during that first class and you do it again throughout the course. And usually by the middle of the course is when you will start hearing some of the feedback in terms of it would be great if you could talk more about this. And those are the feedback that you could take in either in that course, but then also adapt and for your next run of the course as well. Collaboration is key, so kind of using that dialogue and discussion approach, inquiry-driven approaches like asking questions, giving students the autonomy to be able to interrogate their own SDG, for example, that they want to really look into and are compassionate about. Flexibility, and then theory to practice. And this is really important when it comes to delivering more application-based activities on the real world issues. So the next couple of slides, I'll just focus a little bit more on how you can bring some of these strategies in your own praxis. So in terms of the relationship building, and most of them are very much trauma-informed, justice-informed approaches. Relationship building, so focusing on compassion, showing you care, and this could be done by affirming responses, by reflecting using students' words and terminologies that they are using, thanking students, very simple things. Transparency, so using consistent routines, getting students to expect what's to come instead of surprise, that element of surprise, because it also kind of builds on the triggering moments, because a lot of these students are feeling the anxiety. So you want to making sure that they are aware of what's coming. So if there are any triggering moments, they are able to come prepared or be able to step outside. Giving some structure and informing of upcoming readings or assignments and things like that. Reflexivity, so encouraging voicing thoughts and emotions. And this is really crucial because we often forget to bring emotions in the classroom. And it's important. It's okay to cry in the classroom. It's okay to bring those emotions that are not necessarily traditionally as welcomed in the academia. So being able to demonstrate that as an instructor, but also able to welcome those in the classroom and creating that safe and brave spaces to be able to bring those emotions. And then, of course, self-reflection through either weekly journals, but also just going outside, having a conversation with a colleague or a friend or a peer. Somatic awareness is really key, and I think this could be done through either breathing exercises, grounding exercises. A lot of meditative exercises are out there that only take less than 5 minutes, and you can integrate them into your classrooms at the beginning or either at the end. And it really facilitates that grounding and bringing emotions in place and be able to support those emotions as you're going through the agenda. Creative expressions, giving opportunities for students to choose how they want to do their assignments, either creative writing, dance, theater, music, and you would be surprised and really just blown away by what students can do with this freedom of creativity. And the level of assignments that you get really increases. Experiential learning, so having those role plays, debates, and discussions is really meaningful, and as well as problem-based learning. So really trying to bring in real life community-driven projects, being able to get students to go out into the community, connect with the community who are already working on the SDGs, and be able to work on them as well. One of the websites that I will give out is also called the Movement Map, which is created by the BCCIC here in British Columbia. And Movement Map is a place where you can search organizations internationally, I believe. It's not just in Canada, where you can search for organizations through SDGs. So which organizations are working in your local community on various SDGs. So it's called Movement Map, I believe, .com.org. I don't know. Nature and land-based learning, which is really, really crucial. So again, just taking out students in nature as much as possible. And I think that's where a lot of the learning happens. Nature and trees as teachers are really good facilitators of teaching, and be able to get that integrated in your courses is really exceptional. Like I said, debates and discussions, facilitating those in your classroom, and community engaged learning, which I also spoke about. So I think I only had about 20 or so minutes, so I'm going to stop there. But I'm happy to, and there's also the climateeducation.ca website, where you will find a whole bunch of grounding exercises, as well as that website touches a lot on values and how you can uphold and enact and bring these values in your own praxis and your classroom as well. So climateeducation.ca is a good place to go and get those details. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Hunter, for that very deep dive into some of the pedagogical elements that can help advance SDGs. And I'm gonna ask that maybe as we go through the questions and answers, you mentioned a couple of websites at the end. Maybe you can drop them in the chat as well. Maybe.
Yes. I don't remember the movement map, but I will try and find that one.
So I don't see any Q&As yet, but if folks want to either raise their hand or drop questions in the chat, we can get started. And we have the good doctor here for a few more minutes, so it would be good for us to take advantage.
Okay, here is the movement map right there.
Thank you.
Oh, Kelly, thank you for sharing that. She shared it already. Great.
We have a number of comments from folks there, including from Christiane, thanking you and hoping for more sessions like this one. I had a question, but I wanted to go to the folks.
I have one question, if I may. This is Ali speaking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Hunter, for a very great presentation. I really enjoyed that. In terms of applications of what you suggested, are these currently applied in particular courses or through programs at UBC, or are there specific examples that you can share with us in terms of courses that are already using these guidelines or suggestions? That would be great if you have, or you can recommend some of those actual applications, or even if there is any form of documents based on those implemented. Thank you. I hope I was clear about my question.
Yeah, yes, you were absolutely, Ali. Thank you so much for that question. Yes, so this approach, I kind of started really looking into that and got diving deep into it about 2 years ago. So it's still fairly new. However, so I teach in the teacher education program in the Faculty of Education here at UBC, and we have embedded this approach in few of those teacher education programs. And it's interesting because teachers, they know that they have to teach the SDGs. They need to teach about the SDGs. They need to teach about the poly crisis, the climate crisis that we are facing in the classroom. They just don't know how, and or they don't necessarily have the time to dig into how they want to bring that, and they don't feel like they're experts in some of these issues. So this framework, this approach really helps in terms of bringing that this like little bit at a time. So you don't have to like kind of completely revamp your courses. It's about creating those pedagogical approaches rather than curriculum changes. It's the how you teach versus what you teach. So yes, we have embedded that into environmental education course at the Faculty of Education, as well as some of the curriculum and instruction courses. And the response has been great. And it's great that some of these teachers are able to take this in their own praxis as well. We have also integrated it into a co-curricular program, which is a leadership program at UBC called Sustainability Ambassadors Program. So we have embedded this framework into a core curricular program as well. And again, the uptake is incredible. The learning is incredible. The scaffolding is incredible. The response of students to be able to dive into. So one of the key things, and this is anecdotal, this is not a well-researched thought. I would say about, in my 10 years of teaching, I would say about 90% of the students in UBC specifically report that they have not talked about their values in their academic career. And I think that's a problem, because the education that is not values driven is the problem why we are facing the poly crisis that we are facing right now. So we need to adapt that education system. We know that it's highly researched that we need to change that education system, and this is one of the ways to do it, to make sure that we are integrating those values, the justice driven approaches into our. So yes, we have, and we are also collecting a lot of data in terms of how teachers and students are responding to this. And we will hopefully be publishing some of that work soon too.
Thank you.
We have a question in the chat, so I'll start there. Thank you for the great presentation. This question is from Marcy. Really enjoyable. I'm wondering if you have any suggestions on how to build a relationship with students when you teach a large classroom. At the same time, you want to behave equitably. Do you have any advice on this?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have never, to be honest, I have not taught large classes. I have always taught very small classes, and I think that's really privileged to be able to teach small classes. It's really hard to scale this up and be able to respond to this in a large class. However, the pedagogy of kindness is really about making sure that you are able to bring kindness-driven approaches in bigger classrooms. So you're able to scale that up. How you do that is that you're not going to be able to meet one-on-one with 200 of your students, maybe, because it's just very time-consuming. If you have TAs or if you have other assistants in the classroom, kind of going through your approach, your pedagogy with them in advance is really key, because then they are able to create that learning community through those values-driven approaches. But if you don't have that, you are also able to display that and share that pedagogy, share your approach with your students. Be transparent about that and say that this is the approach that I'm taking, and I hope that I can uphold these values in the classroom, and I hope we can create a community to uphold these values as well. So I think transparency and communication becomes really key, and demonstrating and upholding those yourself in the classroom, to you can make a community of practice. becomes really crucial in a bigger classroom. But in a smaller classroom, the way I usually find really successful is through those one-on-one conversations, because the relationships that you can build through one-on-one cannot be built through big group conversations. It's just really difficult. But if you have small group projects, that's another way to do it, right? So you go and check in with those projects and make sure you have those conversations in smaller groups rather than a group of 100 or 200. So those are some of the ideas that I can put forward, but I totally understand the problematic nature of having big classes.
Dr. Hunter, if I can ask a follow-up question for that. Of course, me coming in from the city of Toronto, for those folks that don't know, Toronto is a very multicultural, diverse city, but that also has significant gaps between different neighborhoods and within ethnic groups. So like once you get into real classroom setting and you have to take into consideration the sort of socioeconomic background of the students and the context in which we're teaching them, not all classrooms are the same, right?
Yeah.
So how does the life experience of the student play into the approach that you have here? How are you able to traverse some of those social obstacles out there and sort of be able to approach and reach the student in that sort of caring manner in which you're describing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is really key. So I kind of mentioned a little bit about really interrogating the power positionality experiences of students, but also as an educator. So I think the first step, and I would say I'm still learning too. And there's no perfect answer, because every time you go into a different classroom, it's a different context, because you're dealing with a different set of lived experiences and different realities. So the approach will change as you go along and you will learn. Having said that, I think there are certain things that we can do. And one of the key things is, as educators, as facilitators, is to make sure that you're interrogating your own positionality first. And you are kind of clear, not necessarily maybe clear, but then able to accept what you are going into a classroom with. So what kind of power dynamics do you hold? What are the social identity factors that are very apparent and visual in terms of holding those powers in the classroom? So being aware of that and how that might be influencing the way you are bringing the message in the classroom. But then even having those conversations with your students. And having said that, in the K-12 setting, it might be a little different. The way I do it in my teacher education program is going to be very different for high school students to explore those positionalities, right? So doing exercises and talking about social identity factors and how they're impacting different groups, and not necessarily targeting individuals that are present in the classroom, but having that overall conversation about where are we living and what is our community made of? Let's explore those identity factors and how they influence each other. And the more conversations that we have in the classroom, the more comfortable we become, the more comfortable students become in having those conversations. And if you make those, if your approach is kind and compassionate, then those students will hopefully come to you with conversations and discussions. And if something happens in the classroom, if they are facing a challenge. So having more and more of those conversations, and I think is really crucial, because students are experiencing this out there, right? They're experiencing this with their friends. They're experiencing it through social media, in their lives through various channels and various platforms. Why not bring those discussions in the classroom and support them through it, instead of ignoring them and saying that I'm not comfortable discussing it? As teachers, as educators, I think we have a responsibility to be able to support our students with the experiences that they're having in the society, in our communities. So, and I would say the teachers are not comfortable, and which is fair, because if they have never done this before, if I've never done this before, I'll be uncomfortable. But then creating those moments during teacher education program or during a Pro-D programs for teachers in universities, really giving them that tools to work with it.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter, for that addition. We had a question on the Q&A from Dihat. They wanted to know where they can find the full video for the presentation. Francesco's already answered that for those of you that are interested. So Francesco, with that, I don't see any more questions at this point. Did you want us to wrap up the conversation?
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I guess we could end it a little bit early today if there's no more questions from the chat. We could give maybe just another minute or so to see if anything comes in. But if not, we can just go wrapping up while we wait for some more questions potentially. So yeah, just thank you so much, Dr. Hunter, for taking the time to be here and for presenting. That was a great presentation and quite insightful. And I want to thank Matthias as well for moderating the session today and for having helped us throughout the series moderating sessions up until now. And of course, thank you to the audience for being here, for taking the time to watch the session. Oh, there's just in the Q&A, somebody put another thank you. So yeah, so thank you. It seems there's a lot of things in the chat, so I'm sure that the audience took a lot away from the presentation as well. So yeah, thank you to everyone who attended, for participating, for joining us, taking the time to be here. As mentioned, the recording will be on our YouTube channel, so anybody who wants to revisit the presentation or who wants to share it within their network, please feel free to do so. And just as a reminder, this is a bi-weekly speaker series, so we will be having another session 2 weeks from now, same time, noon Eastern Daylight Time on June 24th. So please mark that on your calendars as well, if that's of interest, and we will see everybody in a couple of weeks. So with that, one last big thank you to everyone who is here, and again to you, Dr. Hunter, for the presentation.
Thank you so much for having me.